Well, good evening. I really have to say it's an honor to be here. Mark Barlow, it's an honor to be here. Thank you, bless you for those remarks. She sort of teed up what I can talk about and what I really want to emphasize, which is this idea of public water and public trust. What I really want to talk about, thanks, is this idea of public water and public trust. And in fact, it is not an idea. It is embedded in 2,000 years of Western civilization and also is found in other parts of the world. It is so important that we must declare this again at this time in history. If I don't get anything else across this evening, water is public, it must be public, it must remain public, and it must be protected by the public trust doctrine. That's the end of my talk. Why? Now we're going to get into why. I want to thank Liz Kirkwood, the executive director of FLOW, the organization that I work with this last 8 or 9 years. She helped me prepare these remarks tonight, and I'm thankful for the assistance of some of the research that is ongoing by Nick Klaus, an attorney in Detroit, Ann Arbor. So Liz said, stick to the script. The last time I stuck to the script was probably the first time I was in front of a jury and they didn't understand a word I said. So I'm not going to stick to the script, but I've got lots of notes, and if you have any questions, here it is. We're having a workshop tomorrow, so I'm billed to talk about legal principles. We're having a workshop on the legal principles tomorrow. Those who want to follow up with what I say, please come and join us, and we'll have quite a discussion. This conference, in my mind, tonight, starts because of the embedded intrinsic value of water that exists in every person's heart and soul. And it is the foundation, of course, of life, the name of this conference. But why we're here happened in the spring of 2017 in a hall at Ferris University in Big Rapids, Michigan, where for the first time, at least to my knowledge, having been an environmental lawyer now in Michigan for I don't know how many years, I'm supposed to be retired, but I tell my office I'm in a working sabbatical. I have not seen a moment when a movement started with environment, water, public health, all of us of color, all of us, in Big Rapids, all people of color from all walks of life were in Big Rapids, and thank you DEQ, even though the DEQ said, you can talk all you want about Flint and Detroit, and you can talk about justice and all this stuff. Our job is to hear the science and apply the law. Well, that was Flo's job, to make sure they did. But your job was carried out beautifully because the DEQ ended up paying for that night an organizational meeting of some 800 people that spilled out of the room. And hence we meet here at this conference on September 29th and 30th of 2017. Now, the public trust doctrine is born to protect the intrinsic value of water and health and prevent discrimination and prevent inequality and pass on water and life from generation to generation. It is almost biblical in a way, as if it was invented to be one of those angels with the fire and the sword in face of the tree of life. We touched the tree of knowledge, but not the tree of life. So the public trust doctrine stands as a sword of fire against the privatization of water on this planet by corporate oligarchy. Why? Water came down to us, to our states, and through our U.S. Constitution. Every state took title to navigable water as sovereign. Sovereign is people, for the benefit of people, and all navigable waters, which are part of the arc of the hydrologic cycle. It's all one, right? All those navigable waters are held in trust by every state, enforced in the courts under the common law, which cannot be repealed under U.S. Supreme Court decisions, that says as follows: the state is the trustee, the legal beneficiaries who hold equitable title to the sovereign water are the citizens. The citizens' right to drinking water, to sustenance, to fishing, to boating, to navigation, to their public needs and essentials are protected by this public trust doctrine. And the water and the public trust in that water cannot be alienated to a private purpose or a private corporation under any circumstances. That's a pretty big body of law. No, it's a big idea with great reality if we use it. It's a very short body of law. I think I just summarized it in a few sentences. That's the legal principle I ask you to take with you tonight and carry it forward from generation to generation. In the same way our indigenous First Nation and Indian tribes in this state and in our Great Lakes Basin carry forward their idea of 7 generations and their idea of relationship to water, not as property. So here we are, the public trust doctrine. There's a couple of other things you should know about water law and rights of water law. And here they are. Surface water, lakes and streams, have riparian rights. So people that live on a lake or stream, do they own that water? No. Nobody owns the water. Remember, it's sovereign. Okay? But they have a right to use it. People who live on land have a right to use the groundwater. Do they own it? No. How much can they use? Under what conditions? It's very vague, somewhat subjective, but it is a rule of reasonable use, as long as you use it on the land and in connection with and to benefit the land. Well, how do companies like Nestle get to divert water and export it somewhere? Well, supposedly you can't export water off track unless you do not diminish the flow or a stream or a neighbor's well. So there's a qualified right to divert groundwater. Lakes and streams are not supposed to divert it if there's any diminishment. So we basically have a common law of water connected with property and the commons of the citizens that protects the integrity of water in every watershed because it's not to be diminished or impaired in any significant or measurable degree. That was the basis of Judge Root's decision in the Nestle case in 2003, which was affirmed by the Court of Appeals, although modified. I need to tell you the modification. Privatization comes with many faces. Some of them are disguised. Listen carefully to what's happening, and then we'll get back to the public trust doctrine and its importance. Judge Root said, because 400 gallons per minute would diminish the stream on average by 28% and diminish its levels and flows significantly, such that in summer months when it was dry, there may not be water in the stream, which there was not a couple of the summers. And that because it diminishes that, under the common law, Nestle can't use these 3 high-capacity wells, and they don't get the 400 gallons per minute. Well field shut down. Appeal to the Court of Appeals. Everybody and everybody, the family of stakeholders and the strangers of stakeholders filed briefs with the Michigan Court of Appeals. We argued that the Judge Root was the right rule. It was the honest rule. It was the precedent of the Michigan Supreme Court in a case in 2017. The Court of Appeals listens to arguments from Nestle saying, well, we get to take all the water up to the point of unreasonable harm. And by the way, even if they're harm, you have to balance it against the taxes we pay and the benefits we spread around the community. Oh, I see. You can buy your way through the common law. The Court of Appeals rejected that, but the Court of Appeals adopted a reasonable use balancing test. What did that do? Now listen to this. The previous law was you can't divert if you diminish. The Court of Appeals said there has to be adequate water, but Nestle can pump up to the point of adequate water in the stream, and we are going to erase and ignore the qualified non-diversion rule that protects watersheds from diminishment. For the first time in 2005, a Court of Appeals in Michigan said that water as a matter of property ownership or leasing of property or getting water rights can be exported anywhere in the world. Under our common law, arguably under the Court of Appeals case, you in this room and all of us who are users of water in our watersheds have 7 billion people on the planet competing for our water. Now, I'm not going to set up barriers because water is for all of us and it's a humanitarian purpose. But the fact is, water has meaning where it flows, and you live in accordance with that truth in every watershed and share it when necessary for humanitarian purposes. Now, water is to be used, not sold. Now, let's look at Detroit and Flint just a minute. Now, here you have public service infrastructure, and there are workshops tomorrow on this. But I think the main point here is that the water that goes into public infrastructure is public trust water. The molecules don't lose their public trust nature the moment they enter the pipes. The pipes are public. They serve the public. The people in the cities, in Flint, and the neighborhoods, and Detroit who are shut off, the people in Flint who have been shut off and exposed, you have a right of using the water underneath your land. You don't use it because as part of a community, you have a substitute water that replaces your right. So that right still exists with respect to the service, the water coming to you. It is your substitute, reasonable use of water that goes with your home or your lease and occupancy of your home. It gives you a constitutional basis in which to proceed, in my view. So it's very important when we look at public infrastructure to ask, what is water service? Nestle, in their operations in Michigan, somewhere around 1 billion gallons a year, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. Let's say average a gallon, they get revenues of $1, plus or minus. So let's say it's $1 billion a year. They pay $200 or 27 cents a day. Right? Dasani and Coke pay a fee. It's the same as a residential fee, but they pay more for their meter fee every year because they use more water. That's nonprofit, cost-based water going to you as the citizens. You pay $150, $100, $200 a month, $60 a month. Nestle pays, I don't know what, maybe $27 a month. I'm not sure. $10 a month probably. Why is that? It's public water. They're drawing public water. You're drinking public water. That public water comes from Lake Huron or Lake Detroit. It's public trust water. It's cost-based. You spread the cost. You each pay your share. Somebody else gets that. They put it in a bottle off the public water system, and you're subsidizing it because they make the profit and they don't share it back. You spread the cost. You don't get the spread of the revenues, and we need to correct that in the state of Michigan. And we need to correct it in the Great Lakes Basin. I believe that subsidy is a private subsidy, unconstitutional, under the Constitution of Michigan and the public trust doctrine with this public trust water. Now, near the end of my time, so I want to just leave you with, I could leave you with a list of 5 or 10 things, but let me just leave you with 3 things and I'll sit down. 1, as I said earlier, declare and maintain and preserve water as public, a human right, a constitutional right protected by the public trust doctrine. 2, change the definition of cost in the public water utility law and code. Cost should not be just the nuts and bolts. The cost is the social justice that needs to be paid for when people can't afford their water. That is a cost. The Great Lakes Water Authority and the suburbs should be paying that cost. Three, in order to balance and bring justice to the disproportionality of what I've just described, and I'm only touching the surface. I'm only touching the surface, believe me. We have lots of work to do. But because of the disproportionality and the beginning of people selling water, first of all, the public trust doctrine prohibits it, but if any disproportionality occurs, it must be corrected. We need to establish a a Great Lakes, states in Ontario, Water Equity Trust Fund. That trust fund will make sure that revenues are fared evenly. They go into that fund and they go to the communities first of need, beginning with the poor. Build infrastructure, address social justice issues, address the needs of communities. We don't need to buckle under to the pressure of laws that are favoring private corporations to take over public utilities. So I want to just tell you, I'm going to do a fourth thing. Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Israel, two different places, have discovered that keeping water public works, that decoupling water stewardship from politics works. Having it run by a supervised board of citizens, but managed by professionals who have no political favor to grant, works. That works. What else did they discover? Putting aside reserves, creating trust funds, and pricing, public pricing. When I say pricing, I'm not talking about private companies pricing you out of your home. I'm talking about public pricing like they did in Santa Fe. All right? Public water, public pricing, the biggest users pay the higher price. That creates an incentive for them to use less, reducing the price for all. Everybody gets 10,000 or 7,000 gallons a year. In some cities, it's actually more now. Across the board, it's the lowest, cheapest, affordable rate. Okay? And then it's tiered based on artificiality and increasing intensity and the externalized cost by more and more bigger water users. Makes lots of sense. Common sense. Commons in the name of this conference, I guess. Common sense. So I'm gonna just leave it there with that story. Water needs to be public. Just as I said, we have the tools, we have the construct. We need to embed it in our culture and lives. We don't need a culture of bean counting and managing as if we were corporate managers. Fine. That's the private world. Water is not the private world. It is not by its nature private, as I said at the beginning. It's sovereign, and it must be respected, managed, used, and passed on as it is sovereign, that is, to people. So I'll leave that right here. Thank you.